The gunshot that rang out across the dusty main street of Gunnison, Colorado, wasn't meant for Nora Patterson, but the bullet grazed her shoulder just the same, sending her stumbling backward into the mercantile doorway as chaos erupted around her in the summer of 1876. Blood seeped through the cotton fabric of her traveling dress, warm and wet against her skin, but Nora barely felt the pain through the shock. She had only arrived in town 2 hours earlier on the afternoon stagecoach, her entire life packed into 2 worn carpetbags and a small trunk. The fight between 2 drunken cowboys outside the saloon had been none of her concern until one of their wild shots found her. Strong hands caught her before she hit the wooden planks of the sidewalk. Nora looked up into a sun-weathered face with eyes the color of a storm-threatened sky. The man who held her wore a cattleman's hat and had the build of someone who made his living through hard physical labor. His jaw was set with concern, and there was an intensity in his gaze that made her breath catch for reasons that had nothing to do with her injury. "Easy now," he said, his voice a low rumble. "Let me see how bad it is." "I'm fine," Nora insisted, though the words came out weaker than she intended. The street around them had fallen silent. The 2 cowboys who had been shooting at each other were now face down in the dirt, the sheriff and his deputy standing over them with drawn weapons. "You're bleeding," the stranger said firmly. He guided her to sit on a bench outside the mercantile, his movements gentle despite his obvious strength. "Name's Benjamin Garrett. I own the Bar G Ranch about 5 miles north of town. Nora Patterson." She winced as he carefully peeled back the torn fabric of her dress to examine the wound. "I just arrived today. I'm supposed to be the new schoolteacher." Benjamin's hand stilled for just a moment. "The schoolteacher." Something flickered across his face, an emotion Nora couldn't quite read. "Well, Miss Patterson, you've had quite the welcome to Gunnison. This is just a graze, but it needs cleaning and bandaging. Doc Henderson's office is just down the street." "I can walk," Nora said, trying to stand. Her legs had other ideas and she swayed dangerously. Without a word, Benjamin swept her up into his arms as though she weighed nothing at all. Nora wanted to protest, to insist on her independence, but the world tilted alarmingly and she found herself gripping his shirt front instead. "Stubborn," Benjamin muttered, but there was something almost fond in his tone. Dr. Henderson was a kindly man in his 60s who clucked his tongue disapprovingly at the sight of Nora's wound. "This town gets rowdier every year," he complained as he cleaned the injury. "Young lady arrives to educate our children and gets shot before she even finds her lodgings. It's disgraceful." Nora gritted her teeth against the sting of the antiseptic. "Do you know where I'm supposed to stay? The letter from the school board mentioned a room above the general store." "That's right," Doc Henderson confirmed, wrapping clean white bandages around her shoulder. "Martha Henley runs the store. She'll take good care of you. This should heal clean if you keep it dressed and don't do anything too strenuous for a few days." Benjamin, who had been standing quietly near the door, spoke up. "I'll take her over there and make sure she gets settled." "I've imposed enough," Nora protested. "You must have business to attend to. Nothing that can't wait." His tone left no room for argument. The sun was beginning to lower in the sky, casting golden light across the town as Benjamin carried her belongings up the narrow stairs to the small room above the general store. It was sparse but clean, with an iron-framed bed, a washstand, a small wardrobe, and a rocking chair by the window that looked out onto the main street. Martha Henley, a plump woman with kind eyes and graying hair, fussed over Nora like a mother hen. "You poor dear. What a terrible introduction to our town. I assure you, we're not usually so violent. Those cowboys were from a rival ranch and had been drinking since noon." "I'll be fine," Nora assured her, though in truth she felt shaken and exhausted. The long journey from Kansas City, and then the shooting had taken their toll. Benjamin set down her trunk and lingered near the door. "Miss Patterson, I hope you'll allow me to check on you tomorrow, just to make sure you're healing properly." "That's very kind, but unnecessary," Nora said automatically. She had learned long ago not to depend on anyone's kindness. People made promises easily and broke them just as easily. Something in Benjamin's expression hardened with determination. "Nevertheless, I'll be by around noon." He tipped his hat to her. "Mrs. Henley, please send word to the ranch if Miss Patterson needs anything before then." After he left, Martha helped Nora out of her ruined dress and into a nightgown. "That Benjamin Garrett is one of the finest men in these parts," the older woman said as she helped Nora into bed. "Lost his wife 3 years ago in childbirth, along with the baby. Thought he'd never recover from it, but he's built that ranch up into something impressive. Works from dawn to dusk, that one." Nora's heart clenched with unexpected sympathy. How tragic it was. Sarah was a sweet girl, barely 20 when she passed. Benjamin was devastated. Martha pulled the quilt up over Nora. "He doesn't come to town often anymore, keeps mostly to himself and his work. Fact that he stayed to help you and is coming back tomorrow, well, that's noteworthy." After Martha left, Nora lay in the gathering darkness and thought about Benjamin Garrett's storm-gray eyes and gentle hands. She tried to push the thoughts away. She had come to Gunnison to make a new life for herself, to finally have a purpose and a place where she belonged. At 22, she had already been a burden to too many people. Her parents had died of cholera when she was 16, and she had spent the intervening years being passed between relatives who made it clear she was unwelcome. Teaching was her chance at independence, at mattering to someone. She certainly hadn't come west to develop romantic notions about a widowed rancher, no matter how kind he had been. Besides, once he had assured himself she was recovering, he would forget all about her. That was how these things worked. Nora had learned not to expect more. Sleep claimed her eventually, though her dreams were troubled and strange, filled with gunfire and storm-gray eyes. The next morning, Nora woke to brilliant sunshine streaming through her window and the sound of wagons and voices from the street below. Her shoulder ached but was bearable. She managed to dress herself in a simple blue calico dress, though fastening all the buttons was a challenge with only one arm working properly. Martha brought up breakfast, a hearty meal of eggs, bacon, and fresh bread. "The school board president will be by this afternoon to discuss your duties," she informed Nora. "School doesn't start for another 3 weeks, which gives you time to prepare and recover from your injury." "Thank you, Mrs. Henley. You've been very kind. Call me Martha, dear. We don't stand much on ceremony out here." She paused at the door. "And don't be surprised if half the town stops by to check on you. News travels fast in Gunnison, and everyone's been excited about having a real trained teacher. We've made do with whoever was willing and able these past years, but you came with references and everything." After Martha left, Nora explored her small room more thoroughly. Someone had left a vase of wildflowers on the washstand, their cheerful yellow faces brightening the space. She stood at the window and watched the town going about its business. Gunnison was larger than she had expected, with a main street that boasted not only the general store and saloon but also a hotel, a bank, a blacksmith, a livery stable, and various other establishments. In the distance, she could see the mountains rising up against the blue sky, their peaks still touched with snow even in July. True to his word, Benjamin Garrett arrived at noon. Nora heard his distinctive voice greeting Martha downstairs, and her heart gave an unwelcome flutter. She smoothed her hair and pinched her cheeks, then felt foolish for doing so. His knock was firm but not aggressive. "Miss Patterson, it's Benjamin Garrett. Come in, Mr. Garrett." Nora had positioned herself in the rocking chair, hoping to appear composed and recovered. He entered and removed his hat, his eyes going immediately to her bandaged shoulder. "How are you feeling?" "Much better, thank you. The pain is quite manageable." "Good." He held out a basket. "I brought some things from the ranch, fresh eggs, butter, some vegetables from our garden. And my housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, sent over some of her special healing salve. She's originally from San Francisco and knows remedies that work better than anything Doc Henderson has." Nora was touched despite herself. "That's very generous. Please thank Mrs. Chen for me." "You can thank her yourself when you come out to the ranch." He said it as though it were a settled matter. "Mr. Garrett, you've been very kind, but I'm sure you're a busy man. You don't need to concern yourself with me any further." Benjamin pulled the room's single straight-back chair over and sat down, his hat in his hands. "Miss Patterson, may I speak plainly?" "Of course." "I watched my wife die, and there wasn't a thing I could do to stop it. For a long time after, I didn't much care about anything or anyone. I worked the ranch because it was what I knew, but my heart wasn't in it." He met her eyes directly. "Yesterday, when I saw you fall, something in me woke up. I don't know why or what it means, but I'm not going to ignore it. So if you don't mind, I'd like to continue checking on you until you're fully healed. And maybe after that too, if you're amenable." Nora's throat tightened. No one had ever spoken to her with such direct honesty. "Mr. Garrett, I'm no one special. I'm just a schoolteacher who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Once I'm healed, you'll forget all about me, and that's perfectly fine. It's how things work." He shook his head slowly. "No, you're wrong about that. How can you possibly say that? You don't even know me. I know you tried to stand up when you could barely see straight because you didn't want to be a burden. I know you've got grit and independence. I know you came all the way out here by yourself to teach children, which means you've got courage and heart." His voice softened. "And I know that when I held you yesterday, something clicked into place inside me that's been broken for 3 years." Nora didn't know what to say. Her experience with men was limited to the few awkward courtship attempts by her cousin's friends, all of whom had lost interest the moment they realized she had no dowry or prospects. No one had ever looked at her the way Benjamin was looking at her now, as though she mattered. "I don't know what to do with that," she finally admitted. "You don't have to do anything. Just let me get to know you. Let me help while you're healing. After that, well, we'll see." He stood, settling his hat back on his head. "I need to get back to the ranch, but I'll be in town again day after tomorrow. May I call on you then?" "Yes," Nora heard herself say. "Yes, you may." The smile that crossed his face was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. "Good. Take care of yourself, Miss Patterson." After he left, Nora sat very still, her hand pressed to her racing heart. This was foolish. This was dangerous. This was everything she had told herself she wouldn't do. And yet she found herself counting the hours until she would see him again. The school board president, Mr. Jameson, arrived that afternoon as promised. He was a tall, thin man with spectacles and a serious demeanor. "Miss Patterson, I must apologize for yesterday's incident. I assure you we are not typically so lawless." Martha, Mrs. Henley, explained the circumstances. "I don't hold the town responsible for the actions of drunk cowboys. Nevertheless, it's embarrassing. Now let's discuss your duties." He settled into the chair Benjamin had occupied earlier. "School will run from early September through late May, Monday through Friday. You'll have students ranging from age 6 to 16, probably 20 to 25 children in total. Some of the older boys will only attend during winter when ranch work is lighter. You'll teach reading, writing, arithmetic, history, and geography. The school board provides all necessary books and supplies. They spent the next hour going over details. The schoolhouse was at the edge of town, a single room that had been built just 2 years prior. Nora would be responsible for maintaining order, planning lessons, and preparing students for whatever futures awaited them. Whether that meant more schooling back east or lives as ranchers, miners, or tradespeople. "We're very pleased to have you, Miss Patterson," Mr. Jameson said as he prepared to leave. "Your references from the normal school in Kansas City were excellent. We haven't had a teacher with such credentials before." After he left, Nora felt the weight of expectation settle on her shoulders alongside the ache of her injury. She had worked so hard to get her teaching certificate, studying late into the night while her aunt complained about the waste of lamp oil. This position represented everything she had dreamed of, her chance to prove she was more than just an unwanted orphan. The next 2 days passed in a blur of visitors. It seemed every woman in town found a reason to stop by and meet the new teacher. They brought food, flowers, and advice, and Nora was overwhelmed by their warmth. Mrs. Chen, Benjamin's housekeeper, came personally to check on how her salve was working. She was a small, elegant woman in her 40s with kind eyes and efficient movements. "Mr. Garrett worries about you," she said as she examined Nora's shoulder. "This is healing well. You are young and strong. Mr. Garrett has been very kind." Mrs. Chen gave her a knowing look. "He is a good man, lonely but good. He deserves happiness." "I'm sure he does." "You are alone too, I think. I can see it in your eyes." Nora didn't know how to respond to that, so she simply thanked Mrs. Chen for her help. When Benjamin returned as promised, Nora was feeling much stronger. The wound was definitely healing, and she had regained most of the movement in her arm. He seemed pleased to see her improvement. "Would you like to take a walk?" he asked. "Just around town, nothing strenuous, but I think some fresh air would do you good." Gunnison looked different at Benjamin's side. He greeted everyone they passed, introducing Nora with an obvious pride that made her feel special. They walked slowly, Benjamin matching his pace to hers, his hand hovering near her elbow in case she needed support. "Tell me about your ranch," Nora said as they paused to watch a freight wagon rumble past. "The Bar G has about 2,000 acres of grazing land. I run mostly cattle, about 500 head right now. I've got 4 hands who work for me year-round and hire on extra help during branding and roundup." His voice warmed as he talked about his work. "It's good land with water from the mountains and plenty of grass. I've been working on improving the herd, breeding for hardiness and meat quality." "It sounds like you've built something impressive." "It's taken years of hard work. When Sarah and I first married, I was just a hand on someone else's ranch. We saved every penny to buy our own land. After she died, I threw myself into building it up. Figured if I worked hard enough, I wouldn't have time to think." He paused. "Didn't really work, but at least I ended up with a successful ranch." They had reached the edge of town, where the buildings gave way to open land. In the distance, Nora could see the mountains rising majestically against the sky. "It's beautiful here," she said softly. "It is. Harsh sometimes, but beautiful." Benjamin turned to look at her. "Miss Patterson, Nora, I know this is fast. I know we barely know each other. But I'd like to court you properly if you're willing. I'd like to see where this might lead." Nora's heart hammered against her ribs. "Mr. Garrett, Benjamin, I think you should know something about me. I'm not anyone special. I'm an orphan with no family and no prospects beyond my teaching position. People have always seen me as a burden, someone to be tolerated until they could pass me along to someone else. I've learned not to expect much, because disappointment is easier when you don't hope for too much in the first place." Benjamin's jaw tightened. Then those people were fools who couldn't see what was right in front of them. You don't know me well enough to say that. Maybe not. But I know what I see when I look at you. I see strength and intelligence and grace. I see someone who came west by herself to make a new life, someone who survived loss and kept going. That's not nothing, Nora. That's everything. Tears pricked at her eyes. I want to believe you. Then believe me. He took her hand gently. You'll be remembered in every breath I take. That's a promise. The words settled into Nora's heart like a seed finding soil. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'm willing to see where this leads. Benjamin's smile was brilliant. He lifted her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles with old-fashioned courtliness. You've made me very happy. As they walked back toward town, Nora felt something unfamiliar blooming in her chest. It took her a moment to recognize it as hope. Over the next 2 weeks, Benjamin came to town almost every day. They took walks, shared meals at the hotel restaurant, and talked about everything and nothing. Nora learned that Benjamin was 28, that he had grown up in Texas, that he loved horses and hated turnips, and dreamed of someday having the largest ranch in Gunnison County. He learned that Nora was passionate about education, that she could recite poetry from memory, that she had a quick wit and an unexpected sense of humor. Martha Henley watched their courtship with approval. It's good to see Benjamin coming back to life, she told Nora one evening. And you're positively glowing, dear. Nora couldn't deny it. For the first time in her life, she felt truly seen and valued. Benjamin didn't just tolerate her presence. He sought it out, listened to her opinions, and treated her as though her thoughts mattered. 3 weeks after her arrival in Gunnison, Benjamin finally invited her to see the Bar G Ranch. He drove her out in a well-sprung wagon, and Nora's breath caught as they crested a rise, and she saw the spread before her. The ranch house was a sturdy 2-story structure built of timber and stone, with a wide porch that wrapped around 2 sides. Behind it stood a large barn, a bunkhouse, corrals, and various outbuildings. Cattle dotted the pastures, and horses grazed in a nearby paddock. It's wonderful, Nora breathed. Benjamin helped her down from the wagon, his hands lingering at her waist. Come meet everyone. The ranch hands were a varied group. There was old Pete, who had worked cattle all his life and regaled Nora with exaggerated tales of his adventures. Young Tommy, barely 18, who blushed whenever Nora spoke to him. Carlos and his brother Miguel, who had come north from Mexico and were expert horsemen. They all treated Nora with respect and obvious curiosity. Mrs. Chen had prepared a feast for lunch. She had set the table in the ranch house's spacious kitchen, and Nora found herself seated at a long wooden table while the hands filed in, cleaned up and on their best behavior. Usually they eat in the bunkhouse, Benjamin explained, but Mrs. Chen insisted on a proper welcome meal. The food was delicious, a combination of traditional American fare and Chinese dishes that Mrs. Chen had adapted to available ingredients. The men were initially shy, but Nora asked questions about their work and lives, and soon they were talking easily. After lunch, Benjamin showed her around the house. The downstairs consisted of the kitchen, a parlor, a dining room, and Benjamin's office. Upstairs were 4 bedrooms, though only one showed signs of current use. Sarah decorated most of this, Benjamin said, gesturing to the lace curtains and the hand-stitched quilts. I've left it mostly as it was. Didn't seem right to change things. Nora touched a sampler on the wall, a Bible verse stitched in careful letters. She had beautiful handwork. She did. Benjamin's voice was quiet. Nora, I need you to know that I loved Sarah. She was my first love, and losing her nearly destroyed me. But what I'm feeling for you, it's not a betrayal of her memory. It's something new, something different, but just as real. Nora turned to face him. I understand. And I would never ask you to forget her or pretend she didn't exist. That's one of the things I love about you." Benjamin said it simply, as though it were an everyday observation rather than a declaration that made Nora's heart stop. "You're generous and understanding in ways I never expected." "You love me." Nora's voice came out barely above a whisper. "I do." He crossed to her, taking her hands in his. "I know it's soon, but I'm too old to play games or pretend I don't feel what I feel. I love you, Nora Patterson. I love your courage and your kindness and the way you see the world. I love how you light up when you talk about teaching and how you listen to everyone as though what they're saying matters. I love the little crinkle you get between your eyebrows when you're thinking hard about something. I love you, and I want to build a life with you if you'll have me." Tears spilled down Nora's cheeks. "I love you too. I didn't think I could, not this fast, but I do. You make me feel like I matter, like I'm worth something. You're worth everything." Benjamin cupped her face gently, his thumbs brushing away her tears. "Nora, will you marry me?" "Yes." The word came out choked with emotion. "Yes, Benjamin, I'll marry you." He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. Nora wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed him back, pouring all her hope and love and newfound joy into that moment. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Benjamin rested his forehead against hers. "I want to do this right. A proper courtship, a nice wedding. You deserve that. I don't need fancy things, I just need you. Nevertheless," he smiled, "let's give the town something to celebrate. A Christmas wedding, perhaps. That gives us 5 months to plan, and for you to be sure. I'm already sure. Humor me anyway." He kissed her forehead. "Besides, you need time to establish yourself as the teacher. I don't want anyone saying you only took the job to find a husband." Nora hadn't even thought of that, but she recognized the wisdom in it. A Christmas wedding, then. They told Mrs. Chen first, and the housekeeper's face lit up with joy. "I knew it," she declared. "I told Mr. Garrett you were special. Now I will help plan wedding feast." The ranch hands were equally pleased when Benjamin made the announcement that evening. Old Pete raised a toast with his coffee cup. "About time, boss. You deserve some happiness." As Benjamin drove Nora back to town in the twilight, she leaned against his shoulder and marveled at how much her life had changed in just 3 weeks. She had expected to be forgotten quickly, just another person passing through Benjamin's life. Instead, he had promised she would be remembered in every breath he took. "What are you thinking?" Benjamin asked. "That I came to Gunnison expecting to find a job and maybe a place to belong. I never imagined I'd find home." His arm tightened around her. "You have, though. You're home now, Nora. With me." The next months unfolded like a beautiful dream. School started in early September, and Nora threw herself into teaching with passion and dedication. Her students ranged from 6-year-old Emma Thompson, who could barely write her own name, to 15-year-old James Holloway, who was more interested in ranching than reading but attended school to please his mother. Nora quickly learned that teaching in a one-room schoolhouse required creativity and patience. She divided her students into groups by ability rather than age and moved between them throughout the day. The older students helped the younger ones, and Nora found ways to make lessons engaging for everyone. She brought in objects from nature to teach science, used practical examples for arithmetic, and encouraged her students to write about their own experiences. The town embraced her fully. Parents thanked her for making their children excited about learning. The school board praised her innovative methods, and through it all, Benjamin was her constant support. He came to town twice a week, sometimes more, and they spent every possible moment together. In October, Nora met Benjamin's neighbors and friends at a harvest dance. The whole county seemed to turn out for the event, held in a large barn that had been cleared and decorated for the occasion. Nora wore a new dress, a deep green silk that Martha had helped her sew, and Benjamin couldn't take his eyes off her. "You're beautiful," he murmured as he led her onto the dance floor. "You're not so bad yourself, Mr. Garrett." Nora smiled up at him. He had dressed in his best suit, and his hair was freshly cut. They danced until Nora's feet ached, stopping only to catch their breath and greet well-wishers. Everyone wanted to congratulate them on their upcoming marriage and offer advice or assistance with the wedding preparations. "You're well loved here," Nora observed as they finally took a break, standing outside the barn in the cool evening air. "These are good people. They stood by me after Sarah died, even when I pushed them away." Benjamin pulled her close. "They're happy to see me happy again. I'm happy too. Happier than I ever thought possible." November brought the first serious snows. School continued, though on the worst days only the town children attended, those who lived within walking distance. Nora used those smaller days to give extra attention to students who were struggling. She spent Thanksgiving at the Bar G Ranch. Mrs. Chen outdid herself with the meal, and the ranch hands joined them for a feast that combined traditional American dishes with Chinese specialties. After dinner, Benjamin took Nora for a walk despite the cold. They bundled up in heavy coats and walked to a hill that overlooked the ranch. "In the spring, this whole hillside is covered with wildflowers," Benjamin said. "Sarah loved to come up here and pick bouquets." Nora squeezed his hand. She had good taste. She did. He turned to face Nora. "I want you to know that I've made peace with her death. For a long time, I was angry at God, at the world, at myself. But loving you has helped me see that life goes on, that there's still joy to be found. You've healed something in me, Nora. You've healed me too. I spent so long believing I didn't matter to anyone. You've shown me I was wrong." As December arrived, wedding preparations intensified. Martha coordinated with Mrs. Chen to plan the reception, which would be held at the ranch. The ceremony itself would take place inGunnison's small church, built just 5 years earlier and still smelling faintly of fresh pine. Nora made her own wedding dress with Martha's help. A simple but elegant gown of cream-colored wool with lace at the collar and cuffs. She had no family to invite, but it didn't matter. The whole town would be there, and they had become her family. A week before the wedding, Benjamin gave her a gift. It was a beautiful wooden box, clearly handmade, with her initials carved into the lid. "I made it myself," he said, looking almost shy. "Open it." Inside, nestled on velvet, was a golden locket. Nora opened it to find 2 small spaces for photographs. "It's beautiful, Benjamin. I thought you might want to put pictures of your parents in it. Mrs. Chen told me you had mentioned them. I know they're gone, but I wanted you to have a way to keep them close." Nora's eyes filled with tears. She did have one small photograph of her parents, taken shortly before they died, and a sketch her mother had drawn of her as a child. "That's so thoughtful." "Thank you. They made you who you are, Nora. They deserve to be honored." 2 days before the wedding, a winter storm blew in with unexpected ferocity. Snow fell so heavily that visibility was reduced to almost nothing. Nora dismissed school early, sending the children home before conditions worsened. She spent the rest of the day in her room above the general store, watching the snow pile up and hoping the storm would pass before the wedding. By the next morning, the storm had moved on, leaving behind a world transformed by snow. Everything was white and pristine, the sun glinting off the drifts like diamonds. Men worked to clear the streets, and everyone pitched in to make sure the church and the path to it were accessible. Benjamin rode into town that evening, looking half frozen despite his heavy coat. "I had to come," he said when Nora scolded him for traveling in such conditions. "I had to see you, make sure you were all right. I'm fine. But you shouldn't have risked it." "I'd risk far more than a little cold for you." He pulled her into his arms, and Nora stopped protesting, simply grateful for his presence. The wedding day dawned clear and cold, with temperatures well below freezing but skies of brilliant blue. Nora woke early, her stomach fluttering with nervous excitement. Martha helped her dress, fussing over every detail. "You look like a princess," the older woman said, tears in her eyes. "Oh, Nora, I'm so happy for you." "Thank you, Martha, for everything. You've been like a mother to me these past months, and you've been like a daughter I never had." Martha hugged her carefully, mindful of the dress. The church was packed. It seemed everyone in Gunnison County had turned out despite the cold. Garlands of evergreen decorated the pews, filling the air with the scent of pine. Candles provided warm light, their flames dancing in the drafts. Nora walked down the aisle alone, her head high. She had no father to give her away, but she didn't need one. She was giving herself to Benjamin, freely and joyfully. He stood at the altar in a new suit, his eyes fixed on her with such love and wonder that Nora's breath caught. As she reached him, he took her hands, and she felt the slight tremor in his fingers that told her he was as moved as she was. Reverend Thomas performed the ceremony, his words about love and commitment echoing through the church. When it came time for vows, Benjamin spoke clearly and firmly. "I, Benjamin, take you, Nora, to be my lawfully wedded wife. I promise to love you, honor you, and cherish you, in sickness and in health, in prosperity and in hardship, for all the days of my life. You are my heart, my home, and my future." Nora's voice shook with emotion as she replied, "I, Nora, take you, Benjamin, to be my lawfully wedded husband. I promise to love you, honor you, and cherish you, in sickness and in health, in prosperity and in hardship, for all the days of my life. You have given me a home and shown me what it means to be truly loved." The ring Benjamin slipped onto her finger was a simple gold band, warm from his pocket. Nora placed a matching band on his finger, marveling at how right it felt. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," Reverend Thomas declared. "Benjamin, you may kiss your bride." The kiss was tender and sweet, a promise of all the kisses to come. The church erupted in applause and cheers as they turned to face their community as Mr. and Mrs. Garrett. The reception at the Bar G Ranch was everything Nora could have hoped for. Mrs. Chen had transformed the house into a festive wonderland, with decorations and food that seemed to appear endlessly. The barn had been cleared and heated with strategically placed stoves, creating a space for dancing. Nora danced with Benjamin, with old Pete, with young Tommy, with her students' fathers, with Mr. Jameson from the school board. She laughed and talked and ate and felt more joy than she had ever thought possible. As the evening wore on and guests began to depart, making their way home through the cold night, Benjamin pulled Nora aside. "Ready to start our new life, Mrs. Garrett?" "More than ready, Mr. Garrett." They said goodbye to the last guests, and then climbed the stairs to what was now their bedroom. Benjamin had moved all of Sarah's personal things to one of the other rooms, leaving only the furniture. Nora had already brought over her own possessions, and seeing her clothes in the wardrobe beside his made everything feel real. "Nervous?" Benjamin asked, touching her cheek gently. "A little," Nora admitted, "but more excited than nervous." He kissed her softly. "We'll take this at your pace. We have all the time in the world." Their wedding night was tender and sweet, full of whispered words and gentle touches. Benjamin was patient and loving, making sure Nora felt safe and cherished. When they finally lay entwined in each other's arms, Nora felt complete in a way she never had before. "I love you," she whispered into the darkness. "I love you too, and I meant what I said in my vows. You'll be remembered in every breath I take, Nora, every single breath." Life as Mrs. Garrett was an adjustment but a happy one. Nora continued teaching, though she now made the commute from the ranch each day. Benjamin had given her a gentle mare named Daisy for the journey, and Nora found she enjoyed the daily rides, using the time to prepare lessons or simply enjoy the landscape. Mrs. Chen became not just a housekeeper but a friend. The two women worked together to manage the household, and Nora learned to cook dishes she had never imagined. Mrs. Chen also shared stories of her life in China and San Francisco, and Nora was fascinated by the culture and traditions so different from her own. The ranch hands accepted Nora's presence with varying degrees of adjustment. Old Pete treated her like a beloved granddaughter. Tommy was hopelessly infatuated with her until he met a pretty girl at a church social and transferred his affections. Carlos and Miguel were respectful and friendly, teaching Nora Spanish phrases and laughing at her pronunciation. Winter deepened, bringing fierce cold and more snow. School was occasionally canceled when the weather was too severe, but Nora's students were making impressive progress. Even James Holloway, the reluctant student, had developed an interest in geography and was talking about maybe seeing some of the places they studied. In February, Nora began to suspect she might be pregnant. She missed her monthly courses and felt queasy in the mornings. She said nothing at first, wanting to be certain before raising Benjamin's hopes. But when a third week passed with the same symptoms, she made an appointment with Doc Henderson. The doctor confirmed her suspicions. "You're definitely expecting, Mrs. Garrett. I'd say the baby will arrive sometime in late September or early October. Congratulations." Nora could barely contain her excitement as she rode home that afternoon. She found Benjamin in the barn, working on repairing a saddle. "Benjamin," he looked up, and something in her expression made him set down his tools immediately. "What is it? Are you all right?" "I'm wonderful. Benjamin, we're going to have a baby." For a moment he simply stared at her. Then his face transformed with joy. He crossed to her in 3 long strides and swept her up in his arms, spinning her around. "A baby, truly, truly." Doc Henderson confirmed it this afternoon. Benjamin set her down carefully as though she had suddenly become fragile. "This is the best news." "The very best news." Then his expression clouded slightly. "Are you frightened after what happened to Sarah?" "A little," Nora admitted. "But Doc Henderson said I'm young and healthy. He doesn't anticipate any problems." "I won't lose you." Benjamin's voice was fierce. "I can't lose you, Nora." "You won't. I promise." She took his hands. "We're going to have a family, Benjamin, our child." That evening they told Mrs. Chen, who immediately began planning nutrition regimens and herbal teas to ensure a healthy pregnancy. The ranch hands were informed the next day and reacted with genuine pleasure. Even the rough cowboys seemed touched by the news. "A baby at the Bar G again," old Pete said, wiping at his eyes. "That's real fine, Mrs. Garrett. Real fine." Nora taught through the end of the school year in May, though she was beginning to show. Her students were fascinated by the baby, and the younger children liked to talk to her belly. When school let out for the summer, she bid goodbye to her students with mixed emotions. "Will you come back to teach next year?" Emma Thompson asked, her eyes wide with concern. "I don't know yet, sweetheart. We'll have to see. But if I don't, whoever the new teacher is will take good care of you." The truth was that Nora hadn't decided. Part of her loved teaching and didn't want to give it up. Part of her wanted to focus entirely on being a wife and mother. She and Benjamin had discussed it several times without reaching a conclusion. "Whatever you decide, I'll support you," Benjamin had said. "If you want to keep teaching, we'll make it work. If you want to stay home with the baby, that's wonderful too. It's your choice, Nora." Summer brought heat and hard work. The ranch was busy with branding and preparations for driving part of the herd to market. Benjamin hired extra hands for the season, and the ranch buzzed with activity. Nora helped Mrs. Chen prepare meals for the crew and kept the household running smoothly. Her pregnancy progressed well, though the heat made her uncomfortable. She spent many afternoons resting in the shade of the porch, watching the mountains and feeling the baby move inside her. Benjamin was attentive to the point of being overprotective, constantly checking on her and insisting she not overexert herself. "I'm pregnant, not ill," Nora reminded him one evening when he had scolded her for carrying a basket of laundry. "I know, but humor me. I couldn't stand it if anything happened to you." "Nothing is going to happen to me. Women have babies every day. You're not just any woman. You're my woman, my wife, my heart." He pulled her close, his hand resting on her swollen belly. "Both of you are precious to me." The baby kicked, and Benjamin's face lit up with wonder. "Did you feel that?" "Hard to miss," Nora said with a laugh. "This child is active." "Takes after his mother, then. Or her mother." They had spent many evenings debating whether the baby would be a boy or girl. Benjamin claimed he didn't care either way, though Nora suspected he hoped for a son. She herself had no preference, only wanting a healthy child. August brought a brief scare when Nora had some cramping and spotting. Doc Henderson came out to the ranch and examined her, then assured them it was nothing serious. "Some women experience this. You need to rest more, Mrs. Garrett. No more helping with housework or riding into town. Stay in bed as much as possible for the next few weeks." Benjamin enforced the doctor's orders strictly. He set up a comfortable space for Nora in their bedroom, with books and needlework to keep her occupied. He brought her meals personally and sat with her every evening, reading aloud or simply talking. "You must be so bored with me," Nora said one night. "Bored? Never. These are some of my favorite hours, just sitting with you. I feel useless, lying here while everyone else works. You're growing our child. That's the most important work there is." He kissed her forehead. "Rest, Nora. Let us take care of you for once." September arrived with cooler temperatures and the promise of autumn. Nora had been given permission to move around the house again, though Doc Henderson still urged caution. The baby had dropped lower, and the doctor predicted birth would come soon. It was a clear night in late September when Nora woke with the first contractions. She lay still for a moment, timing them, not wanting to wake Benjamin unnecessarily. But when they came stronger and closer together, she touched his shoulder. "Benjamin, it's time." He was instantly awake. "The baby, now." "Yes, now." Another contraction hit, and Nora gripped his hand. The next hours were a blur of activity. Benjamin sent Tommy racing to town for Doc Henderson. Mrs. Chen appeared with clean linens and hot water, her calm presence soothing. The other hands kept to the bunkhouse, though Nora could hear their voices carrying across the yard, anxious and excited. Labor was harder than Nora had imagined. The pains came in waves that seemed to tear her apart. She gripped Benjamin's hand so hard she was afraid she might break his fingers, but he never complained, simply murmured encouragement and wiped the sweat from her forehead. Doc Henderson arrived and took charge with quiet efficiency. "You're doing fine, Mrs. Garrett, just fine. Won't be long now." "How long?" Nora gasped between contractions. "Hard to say exactly, but your body knows what to do, trust it." Hours passed in a haze of pain and effort. Benjamin stayed by her side the entire time, despite Doc Henderson's suggestion that he might want to wait downstairs. "I'm not leaving her," Benjamin said firmly. "She needs me." "I do," Nora agreed. "Please stay." Dawn was breaking when Doc Henderson finally said, "All right, Mrs. Garrett. Next contraction, you push with everything you've got." Nora pushed, drawing on reserves of strength she didn't know she had. She pushed until she thought she would die from the effort, and then she pushed some more. "The head's out," Doc Henderson announced. "One more big push." Nora bore down with all her might, and suddenly there was a release, a sensation of something leaving her body. A moment of terrifying silence followed, and then the most beautiful sound in the world, a baby's cry. "It's a boy," Doc Henderson said, holding up a red, squalling infant. "A healthy baby boy." Tears streamed down Nora's face as the doctor cleaned the baby and wrapped him in a soft blanket. Then he was placing the infant in her arms, and Nora looked down at her son for the first time. He was beautiful, with a shock of dark hair and eyes that were trying to focus. His tiny fingers curled around hers, and Nora felt her heart expand with a love so fierce it was almost painful. Benjamin was crying too, staring at his son with naked wonder. "He's perfect. Nora, you did it. He's perfect." "We have a son," Nora whispered. "A son, Benjamin." Doc Henderson finished his work, making sure Nora was recovering well. "You did excellent, Mrs. Garrett. Natural childbirth is hard, but you came through like a champion. Now you rest while I check over this little man." The baby was examined and pronounced completely healthy. "A good weight, good lungs, everything where it should be," the doctor declared. "You two have a fine son." After Doc Henderson left with instructions for care and a promise to check back in a few days, Benjamin climbed carefully into bed beside Nora and their son. The three of them lay together as the sun rose higher, bathing the room in golden light. "What should we name him?" Benjamin asked softly. They had discussed names but never settled on one. Nora looked down at her son, studying his tiny features. "What about Samuel? It means heard by God." "I prayed so long for a family, for a place to belong. Maybe God heard me after all." "Samuel Garrett." Benjamin tested the name. "I like it. Samuel Benjamin Garrett. That's perfect." Mrs. Chen peeked in around mid-morning, smiling at the sight of the new family. "I bring food and tea." "You must eat, keep strength." The ranch hands came by later, awkward and gentle, to see the baby and congratulate Nora. Old Pete openly wept. "Never thought I'd see another baby at the bar. Gee, this is a blessing, a real blessing." The next weeks were exhausting but wonderful. Samuel was a good baby, sleeping for decent stretches and nursing well. Nora was amazed by the strength of her maternal feelings. She had worried during pregnancy that she wouldn't know how to be a mother, having lost her own so young. But instinct took over, and she found herself understanding what Samuel needed almost before he expressed it. Benjamin was an attentive father, helping with the baby whenever he could. He would hold Samuel for hours, just watching him sleep, his face soft with love. "He looks like you," Nora observed one evening. "You think so? I see you in him around the eyes. Maybe he's a perfect combination of us both." As autumn deepened and the world outside turned gold and crimson, the rhythm of life at the bar adjusted to include their son. Nora had decided not to return to teaching, at least not yet. The school board had been understanding and had already hired a replacement, a young man from Denver. "I love teaching," Nora told Benjamin, "but I love this more, being here with you and Samuel, making a home. Maybe someday I'll go back, but right now, this is where I want to be." "Whatever makes you happy makes me happy," Benjamin assured her. Samuel grew and thrived, his personality beginning to emerge. He was an alert baby, interested in everything around him. He would lie on a blanket on the floor, waving his arms and legs, making burbling sounds that Benjamin insisted were attempts at words. Christmas came, their second as a married couple but the first with their son. The house was decorated with evergreen boughs and candles. Mrs. Chen outdid herself with the feast, and the ranch hands joined them for a celebration that was part work family, part chosen family. "Last Christmas, I wondered if we might have a child by the next one," Nora said as she and Benjamin sat together after everyone had left, Samuel sleeping peacefully in his cradle beside them. I'm so grateful my wondering came true. So am I. Benjamin reached for her hand. 2 years ago, I never would have believed I could be this happy again. I thought that part of my life was over. And now I know that life keeps going, keeps giving us chances if we're brave enough to take them. You gave me back my life, Nora. You and Samuel, you're everything. You gave me a life, period. Before you, I was just existing, moving from place to place, never belonging anywhere. You made me believe I mattered. You do matter, more than you could possibly know. He stood and drew her up beside him into a gentle kiss. You'll be remembered in every breath I take, Nora. I meant that when I said it, and I mean it now. You're the air I breathe, the beat of my heart. And you're mine, Nora whispered. My heart, my home, my love. The winter passed peacefully. Nora sometimes missed her students and would think about the new teacher, hoping he was doing well by them. But any regrets were fleeting, drowned out by the joy of watching Samuel grow and change every day. Spring brought new life to the ranch. Calves were born, the work ramped up again, and the landscape burst into color. Samuel was 6 months old, sitting up on his own and laughing at everything. His smile could light up a room, and everyone on the ranch adored him. One afternoon in May, Nora took Samuel outside to enjoy the sunshine. She sat on the porch steps with him in her lap, pointing out birds and flowers and naming them. Benjamin came around the corner of the house, dusty from working with horses, and stopped to watch them. "What?" Nora asked, seeing his expression. "Just thinking how lucky I am, how blessed." He sat down beside them, and Samuel immediately reached for him with a delighted squeal. Benjamin took his son, tossing him gently in the air and catching him, making the baby laugh. "We're the lucky ones," Nora said. "I never imagined life could be like this." "Like what?" "So full, so happy." "So right." She leaned against Benjamin's shoulder. "Remember when you first told me I'd be remembered in every breath you took? I thought it was a beautiful thing to say, but I didn't really believe it. I thought once the novelty wore off, you'd realize I was ordinary. And now I believe it. Because you're remembered in every breath I take too, Benjamin. You and Samuel, you're woven into every part of me." That summer, Nora discovered she was pregnant again. The news brought joy mixed with a touch of nervousness. Samuel was not yet a year old, and 2 babies so close in age would be challenging. "We'll manage," Benjamin assured her. "Mrs. Chen is here, and we can hire a girl from town to help if needed. You won't be alone in this." The second pregnancy was easier than the first, perhaps because Nora knew what to expect. She continued to care for Samuel and help around the ranch, though everyone was careful to make sure she didn't overwork herself. Samuel took his first steps in September, right around his first birthday. He toddled across the parlor into Nora's waiting arms, his face alight with pride at his accomplishment. Benjamin whooped with joy and scooped him up, spinning him around until the baby giggled hysterically. "Our son is walking," Benjamin said, as though Nora hadn't just witnessed it herself. "Already walking." "He's growing so fast," Nora agreed. "Soon he'll be running all over the ranch, getting into everything. Just like his mother, independent and adventurous." The second baby, another boy they named Thomas after Benjamin's father, was born in early March of 1879. The birth was easier than Samuel's had been, and Thomas was a calm, peaceful infant who seemed content to simply observe the world around him. "2 sons," Benjamin said, looking between Samuel, who was playing on the floor with wooden blocks, and Thomas, asleep in his cradle. "I'm a lucky man." "We might have a daughter next time," Nora teased. "Next time? Woman, you just gave birth 2 days ago." "I know, I'm just saying, eventually, I'd like a daughter. I'd like whatever God sees fit to give us, as long as you're healthy and happy." Life with 2 small children was chaotic, but wonderful. Samuel was an energetic toddler into everything, while Thomas was content to watch his older brother's antics from wherever he'd been placed. Mrs. Chen was invaluable, stepping in to help whenever Nora was overwhelmed. The ranch continued to prosper. Benjamin's careful breeding program was paying off, and the Bar G was becoming known for quality cattle. He expanded the herd and bought another 500 acres of adjoining land. Money was no longer tight, and they could afford small luxuries. For Nora's birthday that year, Benjamin gave her a piano that had been shipped all the way from Denver. It took 6 men to get it into the house, but once it was positioned in the parlor, Nora sat down and played for the first time in years. "My mother taught me," she explained to Benjamin as her fingers found familiar melodies. "I haven't played since before she died. I didn't think I'd remember." But her hands remembered even if her mind doubted. She played simple songs at first, then more complex pieces as muscle memory returned. Samuel was fascinated by the music, and even young Thomas seemed to respond, cooing and waving his arms. That evening, after the boys were in bed, Nora played while Benjamin sat nearby, his eyes closed, a slight smile on his face. "What are you thinking?" she asked during a pause between songs. "That this house has come back to life. For so long after Sarah died, it was quiet and empty, even with me living in it. Now it's full of music and laughter and love. It's a home again, Nora. You made it a home." "We made it a home," she corrected. "All of us together." The years flowed by, marked by small moments and big milestones. Samuel started helping with small ranch chores, proudly collecting eggs from the chicken coop. Thomas took his first steps. Nora occasionally felt a pang of longing for teaching but found satisfaction in educating her own children. She taught them letters and numbers, read to them constantly, and watched with pride as they grew curious and bright. In the summer of 1881, Nora gave birth to their daughter, whom they named Caroline. She had Nora's coloring with reddish-brown hair and green eyes, and Benjamin adored her instantly. "My little girl," he would say, holding her against his chest while she slept. "My beautiful little Caroline." "You're going to spoil her terribly," Nora predicted. "Absolutely," Benjamin agreed without shame. With 3 children, the house was constantly full of noise and activity. Samuel, now 5, was starting to help his father with real ranch work. Thomas, 3, was quieter but observant, often pointing out things others missed. And Caroline, from the beginning, showed signs of having her mother's strong will. Martha came out to the ranch often to visit. She had become like a grandmother to the children, bringing treats and telling stories. "Look at you," she would say to Nora. "Remember when you first arrived in Gunnison, shot and scared? Now look at you, with this beautiful family and this wonderful life." "I remember," Nora would reply. "I remember thinking I'd be forgotten quickly, that I was just another person passing through Benjamin's life. And instead, I found everything I'd ever dreamed of, and things I hadn't even known to dream about." The school board approached Nora several times over the years, asking if she would consider returning to teach. The young man they'd hired had left after 2 years, and his replacement hadn't worked out well. Nora was tempted but always declined. Her children needed her, and she treasured these years with them. "Someday," she told Benjamin, "when they are older and in school themselves, maybe then I'll go back to teaching." "Whatever you want, Nora. You know I support you either way." On their 5th wedding anniversary, Benjamin took Nora on a picnic to the hillside where he'd once told her about Sarah picking wildflowers. It was a warm day in December, unusually mild, and Mrs. Chen had agreed to watch the children for the afternoon. They spread a blanket on the dormant grass and ate the food Mrs. Chen had packed, talking about everything and nothing. 5 years of marriage had made them comfortable with each other, able to communicate with looks and gestures as much as words. "You ever regret it?" Nora asked. "Marrying me so quickly, taking on the responsibility?" "Never. Not for one single second." Benjamin took her hand. "You're the best thing that ever happened to me, Nora. You and our children, you're my whole world. You're mine, too. I used to think I was unlovable, that there was something wrong with me because no one seemed to want me around. You proved me wrong. They were fools, all of them. I'm just grateful for their foolishness, because it meant you were still available when you stepped off that stagecoach in Gunnison. I'm grateful, too. For the drunk cowboys, for the stray bullet, for you catching me. For all of it, even the scary parts, because they led me here." They lay back on the blanket, holding hands and watching clouds drift across the blue sky. It was peaceful and perfect, a moment out of time. "You'll be remembered in every breath I take," Benjamin said softly. "I told you that, do you remember?" "I remember." "I thought it was the most romantic thing anyone had ever said to me." "It was true then, and it's true now. You're part of me, Nora. When I breathe for you and because of you. When my heart beats, it beats for our family. You gave me a reason to live again. And you gave me a reason to believe in love, in family, in home." Nora rolled onto her side to face him. "I love you more than I did on our wedding day, and I didn't think that was possible." "Love grows," Benjamin said. "It deepens and strengthens with time and experience. We've built something real together, Nora. Something that will last." As the sun began to lower toward the horizon, they rode back to the ranch together. Nora could hear the children's voices before they even reached the house. Samuel shouting something about a frog he'd found, Caroline's high-pitched squeal of delight. "Our wild bunch," Benjamin said with a laugh. "Our beautiful wild bunch," Nora corrected. The years continued to pass, each one bringing new challenges and joys. The children grew, the ranch prospered, and Nora and Benjamin's love deepened. There were hard times too, like the harsh winter of 1883 when they lost a quarter of their herd, or when Thomas came down with pneumonia and they spent terrifying weeks nursing him back to health. But they faced everything together, their partnership strengthened by shared trials. In 1884, Nora discovered she was pregnant again. At 30, with 3 children already, she hadn't been planning on more, but she accepted the news with equanimity. Benjamin was delighted. "Another child," he said, his hand on her still flat belly. "Another blessing." This baby, another girl they named Margaret, was born in early 1885. She had her father's dark hair and gray eyes, and her brothers and sister adored her from the first moment they saw her. "Baby Maggie," Samuel, now 9, would say, holding her carefully as Nora supervised. 4 children made the house even more chaotic, but Nora thrived on it. Her days were full from dawn to dusk, but she went to bed each night satisfied and happy. When Margaret was 2 in 1887, Nora made a decision. Samuel was 11 and attending school in town, riding in with Benjamin when he went for supplies. Thomas was 9 and would start school the next year. Caroline was 6 and should have been in school already. "I'm going to talk to the school board about teaching again," Nora told Benjamin one evening. "I can take Caroline with me and Mrs. Chen can watch Maggie during school hours. It's time, Benjamin. I miss it." "Then you should do it," he agreed immediately. "You've always been a teacher at heart. Our children are lucky they get you all to themselves, but it's not wrong to share that gift with others." The school board welcomed Nora back with enthusiasm. The current teacher, an elderly man who had come out of retirement to help, was relieved to hand over the reins. Nora spent the summer preparing, reviewing curriculum and gathering materials. When school started in September of 1887, Nora stood before a roomful of students once again. Some were children of people she'd taught over a decade earlier. Others were new to Gunnison. All of them looked at her with curiosity and hope. "Welcome," Nora said. "I'm Mrs. Garrett, and I'm excited to be your teacher this year. We're going to learn many things together, and we're going to have fun doing it." Teaching while managing a household and raising 4 children was exhausting, but Nora had never been happier. She loved both roles, loved the feeling that she was making a difference in the world in multiple ways. Benjamin supported her completely, helping more with the children and never complaining when dinner was late or the house was untidy. "You're doing important work," he would say, "both at school and here. I'm proud of you, Nora." The years rushed by in a blur of school years and summers, of children growing and the ranch expanding. Samuel grew into a young man who loved ranching as much as his father did. Thomas discovered a passion for reading and talked about maybe going to college back east. Caroline was artistic, always drawing or painting. And little Maggie was still too young to show her inclinations, though she seemed to have inherited her mother's teaching instincts, constantly organizing her dolls and teaching them lessons. In the spring of 1890, old Pete passed away peacefully in his sleep. The whole ranch mourned him. He had been with Benjamin since the early days, and he had watched the children grow up. They buried him on the hill where Benjamin and Nora had their anniversary picnic, under a tree where he could look out over the land he'd loved. "He lived a good life," Benjamin said at the graveside. "He was loyal and hardworking and kind. We'll miss him." Nora squeezed his hand, thinking about how Pete had welcomed her that first day at the ranch, how he'd cried when Samuel was born. Life was full of hellos and goodbyes, beginnings and endings. That summer, a photographer came through Gunnison, and Benjamin arranged for a family portrait. They all dressed in their best clothes and gathered in front of the ranch house. The photographer positioned them carefully, Benjamin and Nora seated with Maggie on Nora's lap, the other 3 children standing behind them. "Stay very still," the photographer instructed. "Don't move for 10 seconds." The resulting photograph captured them all, frozen in time. Samuel, 17, tall and serious. Thomas, 15, with his quiet intelligence evident in his eyes. Caroline, 12, trying not to smile too widely. Maggie, 5, squirming despite instructions. And Benjamin and Nora, their hands clasped together, their faces showing the contentment of a life well lived. When Nora saw the finished photograph weeks later, she cried, "Look at us. Look at what we've built together." "A family," Benjamin said simply. "The family I thought I'd lost the chance at, and the family you never thought you'd have. We built it together, Nora, brick by brick, day by day." In 1892, as their 20th wedding anniversary approached, Nora reflected on how much had changed since that December day when she'd walked down the church aisle in Gunnison. She was 40 years old now, her hair showing threads of silver, her face lined with the marks of laughter and worry. Benjamin was 48, his dark hair mostly gray, but he was still strong and capable. Their children were growing into their own people. Samuel, 19, was Benjamin's right hand on the ranch and was courting a sweet girl from a neighboring spread. Thomas, 17, had been accepted to a college in Denver and would leave in the fall. Caroline, 14, was showing real talent with her art, and Nora was investigating art schools for her. Maggie, 7, was thriving in school and showing signs of being as independent as her mother. 20 years, Benjamin said as they prepared for their anniversary celebration. "It doesn't seem possible." 20 years, Nora echoed. "The best 20 years of my life." They held the anniversary party at the ranch, inviting everyone who had been part of their journey. Martha was there, now quite elderly but still sharp as a tack. Mrs. Chen, who had become an indispensable part of their family. The ranch hands, some old and some new, their neighbors and friends. Students Nora had taught over the years, now grown with children of their own. The church filled with people wanting to celebrate the Garretts. During the party, Benjamin stood and raised his glass. 20 years ago, I married the best thing that ever happened to me. Nora came to Gunnison expecting to be forgotten quickly, just another person passing through. Instead, she became the center of my world, the mother of my children, my partner in every way that matters. He turned to look at her directly. I told you once that you'd be remembered in every breath I take. 20 years later, that's more true than ever. You are my breath, my heartbeat, my life. Thank you for saying yes, for taking a chance on a broken widower and making him whole again. Nora stood, tears streaming down her face. Benjamin, you gave me everything I'd ever dreamed of and things I didn't know to dream about. You gave me love, family, home, purpose. You made me believe I mattered. These 20 years have been the greatest gift of my life. The room erupted in applause. Their children were crying, and Nora saw many of their guests wiping their eyes as well. Later that night, after the guests had gone and the children were in bed, Nora and Benjamin sat on their porch and looked out over the ranch. The night was clear and cold, stars brilliant overhead. You ever think about that first day? Nora asked. When the bullet grazed me and you caught me. Sometimes. I think about how easily things could have gone differently. If I'd been standing somewhere else, if someone else had helped you, if you'd decided not to come to Gunnison at all. But we did meet, and we did fall in love, and we did build this life together. We did, Benjamin agreed, and I'd do it all over again in a heartbeat. So would I. They sat in comfortable silence, holding hands as they had for 20 years. Around them, the ranch was quiet, the sounds of night settling over the land. Inside the house, their children slept safely. It was ordinary and perfect, exactly what Nora had always wanted without knowing it. The years that followed brought more changes. Samuel married his sweetheart in 1893, and they built a house on Bar G land, planning to take over the ranch operations eventually. Thomas graduated from college with honors and decided to become a teacher himself, following in his mother's footsteps. He took a position at a school in Denver but visited often. Caroline's artistic talent earned her a scholarship to an art school in San Francisco, and though Nora worried about her being so far away, she was proud of her daughter's achievement. Maggie continued to excel in school, showing an aptitude for mathematics that delighted her teachers. In 1895, Samuel and his wife had a baby, a little girl they named Sarah after Benjamin's first wife and Nora after her grandmother. Benjamin wept when he held his granddaughter for the first time, overcome by the beauty of the full circle. Sarah would have loved this, he said to Nora. She would have loved you, loved our children, loved seeing the ranch thrive and the family grow. I think she'd be happy knowing you found love again, Nora said softly, that you didn't give up on life. I almost did. If you hadn't come along, I might have just worked myself into an early grave. You saved me, Nora, and you saved me right back. Nora retired from teaching in 1896 at 44. She had taught for nearly a decade the second time around, and she felt it was time to pass the torch to younger educators. The school board threw her a retirement party, and the tributes from former students moved her deeply. You taught me to read, one young woman said, and reading opened up the whole world to me. You made me believe I was smart, a young man shared, even when I was sure I was stupid. You were patient and kind and made school somewhere I wanted to be, another student added. Nora left teaching knowing she had made a difference, and that was all she had ever wanted. Retirement gave her time to focus on her grandchildren. Samuel and his wife had 3 children in quick succession, and Nora loved having them at the ranch, teaching them the same things she'd taught their father. She also took up quilting, creating beautiful pieces that she gifted to family and friends. Benjamin began to slow down a bit, turning more of the ranch operations over to Samuel. At 56, he was still capable, but years of hard physical labor had taken their toll. He and Nora spent more time together, taking rides around the property, visiting their children, and simply enjoying each other's company. In 1900, as the new century dawned, the Garrett family gathered at the ranch for a photograph to mark the occasion. There were so many of them now that the photographer had to arrange them in multiple rows. Benjamin and Nora sat in the center, surrounded by their children's spouses, and their grandchildren. The resulting photograph showed a family that was thriving, proof of what love and commitment could build. From two people to this, Nora marveled, looking at the photograph after it was developed. It's incredible. It's the legacy of love, Benjamin said. Our love created all of this. On their 30th anniversary, in December of 1901, Nora and Benjamin decided to forego a large party. Instead, they spent a quiet day together, much like their first anniversary. They rode out to the hill where they'd had their 5th anniversary picnic, where old Pete was buried, where they could see the whole spread of the Bar G Ranch. 30 years, Benjamin said, his arm around Nora's shoulders. Sometimes it feels like yesterday, and sometimes it feels like forever. The best kind of forever, Nora agreed. Benjamin, do you remember what you told me that day in my room above the general store, when I said you'd forget about me once I was healed? I remember. I told you that you were wrong. You said I'd be remembered in every breath you took. And I meant it, still do. He turned to face her fully. Nora, you are woven into every fiber of my being. When I wake up in the morning, my first thought is of you. When I work, I'm thinking about coming home to you. When I sleep better because you're beside me. You're not just remembered in my breaths. You are my breath. And you're mine, Nora said, her eyes bright with tears. I came to Gunnison expecting nothing, hoping for a job and a place to live. Instead, I found everything. I found love and family and home. I found purpose and meaning and joy. I found you, Benjamin, and that made all the difference. They kissed as the sun set over the mountains, two people who had found each other against all odds and built a life that mattered. The years continued to pass, marked by more grandchildren, by losses and gains, by the steady rhythm of life. Benjamin's health began to decline in his 60s. Nothing dramatic, but a slow wearing down that was inevitable. Nora nursed him through bouts of bronchitis and arthritis, just as he had cared for her through her pregnancies and various ailments over the years. In 1910, at 66, Benjamin finally admitted he needed to fully retire. Samuel took over the ranch completely, and Benjamin spent his days puttering around the house and yard, playing with his grandchildren and sitting on the porch with Nora. "Are you happy?" Nora asked him one afternoon. They were in their rocking chairs, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. "Completely, are you? More than I ever thought possible." Nora reached for his hand. "We've had a good life, Benjamin, a really good life. The best, and it's not over yet." He was right. They had several more years together, years of watching their family continue to grow and flourish. Caroline married an architect and had 2 children. Thomas found a wife, a fellow teacher, and they had 4 children who all loved books as much as their parents. Maggie became a nurse and married a doctor, and they worked together serving the community. Samuel's children grew up and started families of their own. The Garrett clan expanded and prospered, all rooted in the love Benjamin and Nora had shared. On their 40th anniversary in 1916, the family threw a massive celebration at the ranch. There were so many people that they had to hold it outside, even in December. Benjamin, now 72, was frail but still sharp-minded. Nora, at 64, still moved with purpose and energy. 40 years, Benjamin said when he stood to make a speech, though he had to lean on his cane for support. 40 years of marriage to the woman I love. 40 years of building a family and a life. 40 years of being blessed beyond measure. His voice shook with emotion. Nora, you came to Gunnison expecting to be forgotten quickly, just another person passing through my life. Instead, you became my life. Every breath I've taken for 40 years has been because of you and for you. You are remembered not just in my breaths, but in every beat of my heart, in every thought in my head, in every moment of joy this life has given me. I love you more now than I did when I married you, and I'll love you with every remaining breath I have. Nora stood beside him, tears streaming down her face. Benjamin, you gave me everything. You made me believe in love, in family, in myself. These 40 years have been the greatest gift of my life. I love you beyond words, beyond measure, beyond time. The family cheered and cried, moved by the depth of love between the two people who had started it all. Benjamin passed away peacefully in his sleep in the summer of 1918, at 74. Nora found him in the morning, lying peacefully as though he had simply drifted away. She sat beside him for a long time, holding his hand, remembering their life together. Every breath, she whispered. You remembered me in every breath, and I remembered you. I'll keep remembering you, Benjamin, until my last breath joins yours. The funeral was huge, attended by everyone whose lives Benjamin had touched. He was buried on the hill he had loved, next to Old Pete, with a view of the ranch he had built. His headstone was simple. Benjamin Garrett, 1844–1918, beloved husband, father, grandfather, friend. Nora continued to live at the ranch, surrounded by family. Her children took turns staying with her, making sure she was never alone. She spent her days quilting, playing with her great-grandchildren, and remembering the life she and Benjamin had shared. She lived for 5 more years, years filled with family and love. She was present for births and weddings, for celebrations and everyday moments. But those who knew her best could see that part of her was already with Benjamin, waiting. On a warm September afternoon in 1923, Nora Patterson Garrett passed away quietly at 71, sitting in her rocking chair on the porch of the ranch house, a quilt over her lap and a smile on her face. Caroline, who had been visiting, found her looking peaceful and content. Her funeral rivaled Benjamin's in size. Former students, neighbors, friends, and family filled the church to overflowing. They spoke of her kindness, her intelligence, her dedication to education, her love for her family. But the tribute that moved everyone most came from her oldest son, Samuel, now 57 years old. My mother came to Gunnison expecting to be forgotten quickly, he said. She thought she was nobody special, that she would just pass through people's lives without leaving a mark. Instead, she became the foundation of our entire family. She loved our father with a devotion that was beautiful to witness, and she extended that love to all of us. She taught us, nurtured us, believed in us. Because of her, there are now 4 generations of Garretts who know what true love looks like, who understand what family means, who value education and kindness and hard work. She wasn't forgotten quickly. She'll be remembered in every breath we take, every decision we make, every love we share. She was and always will be remembered. Nora was buried beside Benjamin on the hill, her headstone a match to his. Nora Patterson Garrett, 1852–1923, beloved wife, mother, grandmother, teacher. The Bar G Ranch continued to thrive, passed down through generations of Garretts. The family stayed close, united by the example Benjamin and Nora had set. They told stories of their grandparents and great-grandparents, of how they had met and fallen in love, of the promises they had made and kept. She expected to be forgotten quickly, the stories always included. But the rancher said, "You'll be remembered in every breath I take," and he meant it. For 40 years he loved her with every breath, and she loved him right back. That's the kind of love we all hope to find. And every Garrett child grew up knowing that they were the product of that love, the living proof that one chance meeting, one moment of kindness, one promise kept could change everything. They were the legacy of a schoolteacher who thought she was nobody special, and a rancher who recognized that she was everything. The story of Benjamin and Nora Garrett became part ofGunnison's history, told and retold, inspiring generations of couples. The ranch still stood, expanded and improved, but still recognizably the place Benjamin had built and Nora had made a home. The hill where they were buried became a favorite spot for proposals, with young men bringing their sweethearts there to ask for their hands under the watchful spirits of Benjamin and Nora. Because in the end, their story was proof of what matters most. Not wealth or status or fame, but love. Real, deep, lasting love that sees someone for who they truly are and chooses them anyway. Love that keeps promises. Love that builds families and creates legacies. Love that is remembered in every breath, every heartbeat, every moment of every day. Nora had expected to be forgotten quickly. Instead, she was remembered forever. And that made all the difference.